Hello everybody, Aaron Dolan here. Recently I have been answering questions on DigiKey's technical forum. So if you go here to the digikey.com website and down here into content you'll find the tech forum. This is a place where you can post your questions and there's a wonderful community that will then work to provide the best answer for your technical questions. One of the things that I personally struggle with is to determine what constitutes a quality answer. For that purpose, I've enlisted ChatGPT version 4. To get started, I'm going to post the rubric that I've been using into the system. It's a long chunk of text that we will explore at the end of the video. For now, just understand that ChatGPT is ready. Let's go back to the DigiKey website and look at an answer that I recently posted. And we will just copy that into ChatGPT and let it provide the evaluation for us. Looks like it's given me a green rating. And there are 10 categories upon which it bases that assessment, including things like competence, relevance, grammar and spelling, empathy, community building, education, and so on. Something that I find really useful is that rubric or that chunk of text I gave to ChatGPT tells it to evaluate each category and then provide specific recommendations for improvement. Now, this particular one, it says, is pretty good except for grammar and spelling. So if we were to come down here and look at grammar and spelling, it reminds me that I've used the word nominal instead of nominal. Let's go back and see if we can find an answer that's not quite so polished. Here's a very short answer. Let's go ahead and post that. ChatGPT does not like this answer. It definitely lacks empathy. It has nothing to do with community building. It has nothing to do with education. So you could argue that this question, which is fairly short, doesn't do anything to really move that conversation forward and build the community. And if we drill down a little bit further, I suspect those are the recommendations that it will give. This here would have been an excellent recommendation. So offer a hypothetical scenario to demonstrate understanding. For instance, up here, I said, my instinct is to recommend a direct solder connection wherever possible. As for wire, use wide flat strips of copper. Now, this particular question dealt with impedance. And I know that one way to lower the impedance of a wire is to use those wide flat strips. I should have said something to that effect. That may have made for a better answer. So that's an excellent recommendation here. Again, give particular examples to understand why. Here's another good recommendation. My answer would have been better if I had engaged the rest of the community to ask if they had any recommendations for this particular example. To be sure, we don't know the exact application, but some other folks may have been able to add more information about the wide and flat connections for those particular LEDs. More recommendations. As far as an education piece, it may have been useful to provide additional information about why that's important, and maybe included some diagrams to show the differences. So all in all, I'd have to agree this is a rather weak response. Let's see if we can find another. Here's a very short answer. Let's see what it thinks about that. I suspect it's going to be pretty bad. You can see it really didn't like any of the education contributions. Not so good on community building, not so good on empathy. Relevance and focus, not so good. Scroll down and see what it says about education and community building. Yes, I'd have to concur with this. Try to express more understanding of the reader's situation. That would have been good. And this also would have been good to provide assurance that somebody in the community would be able to help once they knew that information. And these are also good recommendations on community building. Again, further dialogue, more community action whenever possible, and recognize the value of the reader's questions. While we're here, I think we should ask ChatGPT what the general purpose of that rubric was. Given the rubric, what is your understanding of the short-term and the long-term benefits to the user and to the community? Question mark. All right, so the machine has given us answers for short-term and for long-term. So the user gets that immediate guidance. Technically sound answers help them resolve whatever situations they may need. And they have a respectful, empathetic place that they know they can go to get those answers. For the community, it's talking about quality control to maintain that consistent environment and trust, and increased participation. So we have clear guidelines and know how that we can help and encourage each other. Now to the long-term benefits. For the user, it talks about high quality educational content promotes learning and growth, which is something that we all need to do as we move through our lives. And I like this here. Over time, that user can develop that connection, making them more likely return, and this is really important, contribute at some point in the future. As for the community, high standards that build a reputation of excellence, attracting more experts and more people to engage in that conversation. Again, more collaboration and community building. Standards, it's a place where people know they can get the information they need, and it values the individual. And as time goes on, this is a product. We have a well-structured product that supports knowledge transfer. Again, good for the user and good for the contributors as well. Before we finish this video, let's go back and take a look at that rubric. This is the rubric that I've been working on for a while now. It starts out with the purpose. So we are participating in a technical forum. We're evaluating answers to questions in accordance with the attached rubric. And here is what we want the machine to do. It starts out providing a single red, yellow, green rating as appropriate. It provides a summary table for each of the 10 categories. And then it concludes with 2 recommendations for each category. This line is a command that just tells the machine to prompt the user for an answer. This line says, watch out for latex formatting. Without that, it gets really confused with some of the weird symbols that are in there. And then we allow integers from 1 to 5. The rubric is broken down into green, which is scales to 5, yellow, which scales to 3, and red, which scales to 1. Inside each of these, we're going to find the 10 elements, starting with things like technical competence, clarity and structure, relevance and focus, politeness and professionalism. And then there's things that I think are really important but are often overlooked when folks are answering questions, including things like empathy. Is there any connection with the reader? Has the person writing the answer taken the time to understand what the reader needs? There's also community building, which is very important because, for example, I'm one person. I know some things, but there's a lot of people out there who know more than I do. And if we work together, we can have much better answers than any of us could do singly. I think education is important, meaning that we provide at least a little bit of information in our answers. For example, I like to include a, quote, fun fact every once in a while. And of course, visual elements. If you can provide those, they do provide a little clarity, maybe a schematic or an excerpt from the datasheet or something along those lines. There's also the yellow ratings. Again, the same 10, but you can see that they're not as clear. These are things that are not as good. For example, empathy. Yeah, we show some understanding of the reader, but there's no real connection. And of course, there's red. So empathy, minimal acknowledgement of the reader's situations or feeling. The problem with that is it leads to disconnection. We're not having people return because they don't feel valued. They feel like they haven't been heard. Likewise, community building, we definitely need to take the opportunity to strengthen each other and leave that collaborative atmosphere open. Besides, it makes it more fun if you're answering questions and there's other folks you can bounce ideas off of. Going back to the forum, let's look at one more. So in this particular example, the user has asked about these horizontal output transistors for an older CRT-based monitor, and I provided this answer. And let's see what the rubric says. So going back to the rubric, the first thing it does, it provides that green, yellow, red rating. So it thinks this one is okay. And then it provides the various ratings. And in this particular one, it thinks I've done a good job. Maybe. Always room for improvement, but that's what the rubric does. Again, it provides that yellow-green rating. It gives a summary of those 10 categories, and then it provides recommendations. That's all for today. I'm very curious what you think about this way of rating technical answers. Please leave your comments or questions in the space provided below. Thank you.